Well, President Biden's campaign says it is full steam ahead to the general election after President Donald Trump, quote, fully consolidated the extreme MAGA base of the party. They're leaning hard into that rhetoric yet again. But recent polls show Trump dominating Biden on every single major policy issue: the economy, immigration, crime, foreign policy, all of the big ones. So Democrats and liberal media won't be talking about policy. That's over there. No, this election, they'll be saying crazy things like this.
Nothing is normal about this at all. And you watched his speech last night. It was completely unhinged. And what I am obsessed with is stop treating him like he is a normal candidate.
Like Trump, Hitler was also viewed as a clown, a goon who could be kept in line.
This is a guy, Donald Trump, who has promised to terminate the Constitution. He said he was going to ban TV networks that he didn't like, said he was going to execute generals that were insufficiently loyal to him for, quote, treason, which, by the way, sounds like the French Revolution with a guillotine. They accused everybody of treason and cut their heads off. And then he talked about a couple weeks ago how he could kill his political opponents with SEAL Team 6 and be immune from it. You can't make a deal with the devil.
Ari, so he's going to cut their heads off. SEAL Team 6 is going to eliminate his rivals. This is some pretty crazy messaging that I do not think has very much general election appeal.
But you notice what they left out. They left out that he won't try to ban his opponent from being on the ballot. So you can talk about all these crazy things that Donald Trump does occasionally say, and he does. But what do the Democrats do? They're the ones who have gone to court to try to throw Donald Trump off the ballot in Colorado and Maine. They're the ones who won't allow a Democrat to run in a primary in North Carolina or Florida against Joe Biden. They're the ones who changed their primary calendar to protect Joe Biden from any type of meaningful primary. So who is it who's the meaningful threat in reality to democracy? It's the Democrats, time after time after time, not to mention the risk to democracy from letting 10 million people in our southern border, including terrorists. So I'm sick and tired of this rhetoric against Donald Trump. I'll criticize the president when his rhetoric goes too far, but I'm more concerned with actions and policy than rhetoric.
And MSNBC, we've been over this, Emily. They won't let him speak. I mean, they didn't take his Iowa remarks. They didn't take his New Hampshire remarks. And then here you have Joe Scarborough saying he's going to kill political opponents with SEAL Team 6. Trump never said that. That is a theory that was postulated by a judge that his attorneys had to respond to in a presidential immunity case. So he literally never said that.
The people that are holding that position, they're never going to stop. That rhetoric, it will never stop. And, you know, I used to live in Seattle. I'm from the West Coast. So I've resigned myself to the fact that the declarations will never stop. But what I think should happen, because there's also a lot of rhetoric coming from the right, too, obviously. What needs to happen, though, is for the Democrats, and especially those who hold those positions of influence in media and influence, and James Carville even, is to ask, why do Trump voters feel the way they do? Why? Do they feel that they're being listened to? Do they feel that their priorities are being attended to? Do they feel that they are seen in the eyes of this administration or people who represent it? And I think it would do everyone so much better, instead of constantly saying, like, how can anyone follow this lunatic, or you know, making these statements that are just so absurd, for only that if they were true, of course, there would be a consequence. And so my whole point is, I think underlying this, because this is where the surprise is going to happen for all of those people, is that when they say, oh my gosh, Trump won again, how could that have happened? It's because they missed the entire point, which was that everyone that is supporting him feels utterly ignored and utterly rejected by everyone who we just heard on TV.
Marie, and I know you'll say, you know, these are cable news pundits, these are strategists, these are television hosts, this isn't the Biden campaign, but FoxNews.com had this reminder, because we know that there's now a new move on the Biden campaign. He's bringing top team from the White House, putting it in his campaign. Biden's new campaign chair previously called Republicans a bunch of bleepers. I mean, and then they're leaning in on the extreme MAGA language. Their intent seems to be demonize half the country.
Yeah.
I don't think that's their intent. Look, I think the Biden team in 2020 and in 2022 learned how to talk to those swing voters who were Obama-Trump voters. That's how they won the White House. It's why they did better in Congress than many people thought they would. Look, I think that they are going to talk about issues. They're going to talk about the fact that consumers are spending more because they feel better about the economy. They're going to talk about women's health care and freedom for women to be able to make choices with their spouses and their doctors and their ministers, and not imposed on them by the government, by Donald Trump and Republicans. They're going to talk about those issues. But there's also some warnings for the Trump campaign this week, too. 33% of voters in New Hampshire who voted for him in the Republican primary say they will not vote for him in a general election. Those are the people that the Biden team is looking at. They're going to be, tens of thousands of voters in 5-6 states that decide this election. Those voters care about women's health freedom. They care about an economy that's getting better. And they do care about Donald Trump's rhetoric. They care about him making fun of Nikki Haley. They care about him thinking he gets a coronation here and that more voters don't actually get to pick him. And so the Trump campaign has reason to be worried this week, too, while the Biden campaign starts the general election, which you are right, they are doing. They are ready and fired up.
Go ahead, Nikki.
No, what were you going to say?
I want to pick something up that Marie said about independent voters and this mood in the electorate. One thing we're really not talking post-New Hampshire is, will Nikki Haley run on the no labels ticket?
It's a good question.
When you look at how President Trump has secured the conservative MAGA, whatever you want to call it, base, that's his. And you look at Joe Biden's got a shaky hold on the progressive base, which I'm not sure they're going to be for him or not. No. There is an opening in the middle. Does Nikki Haley, who did well with independents, want it? We don't know the answer yet. And we don't know if anybody on no labels can win, but we need to keep an eye on this.
Let me just postulate that would destroy her future in the Republican Party, though.
Unless she wins.
Joining forces with Trump seems to be a better outcome for her. But
well, it would be better than using Hillary Clinton's identity politics campaign from 2016 and trying to run for the Republican nomination. So that's what she's essentially been doing. Just really quickly, Joe Biden's new campaign head calling Republicans a bunch of effers a while back. I find that really funny, since Biden and his posse have spent the last 3 years screwing over every American. So isn't it about time that they were on the receiving end of that rather than the other way around from American people? I find it hilarious also that Biden and his sad band of desperados, this is all they have because they can't run on any policy whatsoever, is name calling, and their itty-bitty mini media band along with them picking this up. We've been called everything from deplorables, bitterly clinging to our guns and Bibles, hayseeds, rednecks, rubes, you name it, bring it.
Neanderthals.
Yeah.
I prefer to be a Neanderthal, I guess, instead of a deplorable, but hey, they're both bad.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.